Cocker Spaniel was bred in England for a specific purpose in hunting, the retrieval of downed game. But the great success of this breed, which is known everywhere, is due to its particularly sensitive and stable character, its gentle and appealing expression. The long dangling ears, but above all the large languid eyes, inspire affection and make it much admired. The dog's name derives from its hunting specialization, woodcock, and was chosen in 1893 to differentiate this dog from other spaniels. The cocker is unmatched in flushing woodcock from thorny bushes and undergrowth. It will flush the birds and retrieve them when downed, bringing them gently and obediently to the hunter. The branch of spaniels of which the cocker is the best known example has ancient origins, and a decree is documented in 948 that established a large fine for anyone who killed one of these dogs. Etymologically, the name could derive from the Celtic word span, rabbit. According to some experts, the spaniels descend from ancient brachoid dogs of Spanish origin used for hunting quail. In Central Europe, these quail dogs were numerous and widespread. As the sinologist Tschudi confirms, the German laws of the year 700 mention a Canis acceptorius, used for hunting with falcons, also known as happy Huhund. Various paintings and some documents from this period show that the quail dog was also known as Wachtelhund, but in some areas it was more commonly known as a spaniel. The centre of the development of the breed could therefore be located in the Mediterranean basin, the successive diffusion being due to the migration of various populations. Around 1300, the spaniel was popular in France, a country with ancient hunting traditions, and Gaston Phoebus was one of its greatest admirers. But the true home of the Cocker Spaniel must be considered England, where the work of selecting is widely documented from the year 1400 onwards. In 1570, John Keyes, court physician, better known by the pseudonym Dr. Caius, wrote a book about British dogs of English dogs, in which he gave a precise classification of all the breeds raised in Great Britain. There is a detailed description of the spaniels, which are divided into land spaniels and water spaniels. A black spaniel could have been one of the ancestors of the modern cocker. It must be remembered that in past centuries, dog shows, in the sense of opportunities for technical comparison between the dogs bred in various kennels, were not as common as they are today. Therefore, the breeders of the past, almost all aristocrats or peers of the realm, concentrated the selection on the hunting capacity of the dogs and considered aesthetics of marginal importance. This situation contributed to creating the basis for the diversification of the spaniel breeds as we know them today: the Clumber Spaniel, the Sussex Spaniel, the Springer Spaniel and the King Charles Spaniel. In 1677, Nicholas Cox described a land spaniel that is not dissimilar to the modern cocker. He says it is of a good size and agile, small rather than large, lively and courageous. The puppy must be strong, robust, with agile conformation, fast gait, the tail in continuous movement, the nostrils quivering, with an innate instinct for the search, though never getting carried away and becoming disobedient. Apart from this description, Cox explains why it is necessary to dock the tail. In the first place, it prevents worms from breeding there. Secondly, if the tail is not docked, the dog will be less ready to dive into thick undergrowth in search of the game. Finally, the dog looks better. It is incredible that the absurd idea that worms could breed in the dog's tail, perhaps justifiable in the cultural context of a couple of centuries past, persisted until about 30 years ago. We will close this historical chapter by saying that in 1870 the spaniels were known as field spaniels, that is, land spaniels, and were divided into two varieties, even when they came from the same litter, according to whether they weighed more or less than 12 kilos. The definitive name of Cocker Spaniel was adopted in 1893, but in 1901 the distinction based on the weight of the dog was abolished because it had become anachronistic. The selection carried out has emphasized the aesthetic aspect, which has undoubtedly encouraged the diffusion of the breed worldwide. In 1880, the first examples arrived from America, where the selection was based on aesthetic canons that emphasized the dramatic aspects of the breed. The result was a new breed, the American Cocker Spaniel, which met with public favor throughout the world. This cocker is the smallest of the spaniels. The height for dogs must be 38 centimeters, while for bitches it is 35.5 centimeters. The American Cocker Spaniel has a robust and compact body with a finely sculpted head. The head is well developed and rounded, without any tendency to flattening. The superciliary arch must be clearly marked and the stop well pronounced. The muzzle is wide and deep, with square jaws. The upper lip must cover the lower jaw. The coat is silky, flat or slightly wavy, shorter and finer on the head. The ears, the chest, the belly and the legs are well fringed. The colours admitted are jet black and other solid colours, black and tan, roan and multicoloured. Lighter markings are acceptable on the head. For the multicoloured, it is essential for there to be 2 or more colours in the coat, with well-defined and distributed marks all over the body. The character. The Cocker Spaniel is a lively dog, robust and calm. As a retriever, it is much appreciated for its soft mouth and its obedience. These breed characteristics make it responsive and easy to train, and can be developed in many areas of hunting. The Cocker Spaniel is not the only hunting dog that is chosen as a pet, thanks to its unusual beauty. Its docile character make it a dog that adapts easily to life in the house, both in the city and in the country. To keep it in good condition, it is important to give it plenty of daily exercise and to avoid overfeeding. It is a very devoted dog, submissive but not slavish. It will play happily with children, being an excellent companion and passable defender. The head of the Cocker Spaniel is dolichocephalic, which means that its total length is greater than the width. The skull and forehead are well developed, slightly divergent. The muzzle is perfectly straight. The superciliary arches must not rise excessively, and the head must be refined, lean, well defined, and have no excess skin. The lips are well made at the front, match perfectly, and must be neither pendulous nor thick. The jowls are clearly marked but not too evident. A short or pointed muzzle is a serious fault. The nose is large and wide, with well-developed nostrils, generally black, but brown is acceptable in multicoloured orange, white, liver white and tan dogs. It sits on the same line as the muzzle. The eyes are large but not prominent, brown or dark brown, but never light coloured. The rim of the eyelids is well pigmented and there must be no haw showing. The shape and colour of the eyes give the Cocker Spaniel a gentle and intelligent expression. The ears are set low at the level of the superciliary arches. They are lobular and the cartilage of the pavilion is thin and soft. The total length must reach but not exceed the nose. The ears are long, dangling, hanging close to the cheeks and covered in long, smooth and silky hair. The neck is moderately long with no dewlap, loose skin under the chin, muscular and elegantly set on well-sloped shoulders. The skin adheres well to the body without hanging loose or being superfluous in any part. The body is rectangular. The length measured from the tip of the shoulder to the rump is slightly greater than the height of the withers. The chest must be well developed and reach to the elbow. The rump must be wide and muscular. The belly must not be retracted, though it rises slightly. The legs, in keeping with the overall conformation, must give the dog an easy gait and be perfectly straight. The forelegs must show an imaginary vertical line from the shoulder joint to the tip of the toes. The hind leg should show an imaginary line from the tip of the buttocks to the tip of the toes, passing through the pasterns, which are straight. The feet are solid, round, cat's feet with thick, solid pads. The tail is set low with respect to the top line, especially when hunting. The tail moves joyfully. The coat is long, 4 to 5 centimeters, smooth and silky, never wavy or curly. On the head and the front of the legs, it is very short. Under the chin, on the chest and the back of the legs, it forms ample straight feathering, never stiff or wavy. The colours accepted by the standard are solid colours, black and all shades of tan. Small white marks are acceptable on the chest. Multicoloured coats can be black-white, white-orange, white-tan, tricolour, black and tan. Blue roan, orange roan, tan roan markings are also accepted. The markings in multicoloured coats vary in size. The height at the withers varies between 38 and 41 centimetres. The gait of the Cocker Spaniel is free with a long stride in relation to the size of the dog, but it must not be a leaping or high-stepping gait. Care of the coat. The Cocker Spaniel sheds hair, and it is necessary to brush it thoroughly so that the new hair has sufficient space to grow. A normal metal brush, curry comb and a metal comb, either with fixed or rotating teeth, will do the job. The Cocker Spaniel must be accustomed gently but firmly to standing still on a table for the time needed for grooming. Use a rubber mat so that the dog does not slide around. Brush the coat thoroughly, taking particular care over areas such as the ears, the feathering and the hair between the toes to avoid matting. Clean the dog's ears carefully using cotton wool and alcohol, removing any hair in the auditory canal. The roots are very weak and this is not a painful operation. Careful trimming will enhance the outline of the dog. The coat must not be ruffled on the head and it must be soft to the touch. The hair on the feet must be trimmed using scissors. English Springer Spaniel. The origins. Almost all the modern Spaniel breeds were developed in Great Britain, and it would seem that they have extremely old origins. Dogs similar to the modern English Springer Spaniel were known in the 4th century BC. We know this because coins minted during the reign of Philip II of Macedonia show hunting scenes. With the mounted hunters, there are 2 dogs, one tall and lean, like a greyhound, the other shorter with long hair and similar in shape to the spaniel. These coins prove the breed's origins in Greece or the Middle East. However, it is not known how the dog spread to Europe. Some think that they were brought by the Phoenician traders during their travels and dealings in the Mediterranean basin. The theory is supported by the fact that the Carthaginians called the rabbit span, and Carthage was one of the most important Phoenician colonies. Therefore, the dog most suited to flushing small game may have been called by the name of the rabbit. Other academics, amongst whom the Frenchman de Cheville, suggest a Russian origin. The theory that seems most credible is that hunting dogs with the characteristics of the Spaniels came from Spain, and that the English term Spaniel and the French Espagnol derive from this name. According to this theory, the dogs were introduced to the Spanish peninsula from the Near East by soldiers returning from the Crusades. From the Middle Ages, dogs of a spaniel type appeared increasingly frequently in paintings and literary works, and John Keys, who in 1570 wrote his treatise of English dogs under the pseudonym of Dr. Caius, specifically mentions spaniels. He was convinced that the name derived from the Spanish. In the 18th century, there were two types of spaniel, those suitable for working on dry terrain, known as land spaniels, and those specialised in working in wet conditions and called water spaniels. Some experts maintain that the breed derives from dogs raised in the county of Norfolk and used for hunting all sorts of game. They were heavier, taller and more massive dogs than today's Springer. For this reason, academics such as Stonehenge and Gaillard consider the Springer the primitive spaniel, from which the other types derive. The selection of the modern variety began in 1812, when families of hunters and breeders in Shropshire, a county distant from Norfolk, began to breed spaniels from a branch that they considered particularly talented. The breed was particularly successful in hunting, and in the trials organised in 1899 by the Sporting Spaniel Club, it was noted that the larger dogs worked better. For this reason, from 1902, a class was officially recognised for the larger Springer Spaniels. The first subjects admitted to this category were not necessarily Springer Spaniels. There were also Cocker Spaniels and Field Spaniels that exceeded the height limits for their respective standards. Jetsam Boulder, for example, was first registered as a Springer Spaniel and then as a Cocker, and in 1904, although the standard had not yet been drawn up, the Springers were admitted to the exhibition, and the first breed champion was Beech Grove Will, born in 1898. The name Springer derives, according to some, from the dog's tendency to proceed in leaps and bounds, springing over the ground. Others think that it derives from its use by hunters for springing forward, to spring the game, to drive game out into the open. The first standard was drawn up in 1933 and approved on May the 29th of the same year. In the United States, the first example was registered in 1910. For many years, the Springer Spaniel was little known and used only for hunting. Nowadays, however, its handsome form and coat and splendid character are making it known to an increasingly wide number of dog lovers as an excellent family dog. Character. The worldwide popularity of the Springer Spaniel is certainly due to its aptitudes. Like other Spaniels, it is an all-rounder, capable of working in a number of specialities. It is prized by hunters because it can take on so many hunting roles. This is no jack of all trades but master of none. The Springer will seek, indicate, flush and retrieve any kind of game, with a preference for game birds, a truly multi-talented animal. The Springer unites the hunting characteristics of all the Spaniels, with larger size and a keenness that has decreed its success. Thanks to these characteristics, the breed has shown all its qualities in both hunting and work trials. In fact, it has been included for some years in the international teams that take part in sports competitions, always demonstrating unwavering skill. At the beginning of the 20th century, the eminent trial judge, Colonel R.C. Kane, wrote, "The work of the pointer and the setter is clear and well defined. No one can hold different opinions on how it should be carried out. Each dog must work to reach its ideal standard, and the closer it gets, the better the results will be. Consequently, the task of the judge in a trial of these breeds cannot be difficult, and with a little experience and normal intelligence, it is impossible to make mistakes. However, The mission of a Spaniel judge is arduous because the Spaniel is practically a universal assistant, unlike other hunting dogs. It is not expected to do one specific task, but the work of at least 2 or 3 other breeds, and in order to be successful, it must carry out all these tasks perfectly. This description cannot be equalled. Over the centuries, the Springer Spaniel has developed its versatility. It has been the companion of wealthy hunters who also use specialized dogs for specific tasks, but also the attendant of less affluent hunters who required their dogs to do all the work faultlessly. From this situation came an adaptable, amenable, intelligent, courageous dog with considerable initiative. However, it must not be too independent. It must carry out a scrupulous search, using its keen sense of smell and remaining constantly in contact with the hunter. This characteristic is very important. Since the Spaniel is not a pointer, it flushes the game and must always ensure that the quarry is within rifle shot. The search of the Springer Spaniel must be fast, lively, vigorous, with what we could call a zealous expression, and as we mentioned, it must work within the range of the rifle. A rapid search, tightly weaving and quartering around 10 to 15 meters according to the terrain and the needs of the moment. To do this, the Spaniel must have great intelligence, a considerable hunting instinct, initiative, take pleasure in its work and be logical. Once the quarry has been located, the Springer Spaniel must serve the hunter, flushing the game if it is feathered or springing it if it is furred and guiding it within rifle range. Then it must stop to avoid disturbing further game and creating confusion. Finally, it must retrieve the game, perhaps diving into freezing water or plunging into brambles and undergrowth. When retrieving, it must use a soft mouth. To work well in such a variety of situations, the essential characteristics are formidable intelligence, which allows the dog to learn quickly and to act logically and independently. Good constitution, which allows it to face thorns, undergrowth, water and cold for a whole day's work, and a passion for hunting. This is the Springer out hunting, but the breed has also become popular in recent years as a family dog. The Springer Spaniel is a handsome, gentle dog, friendly with all, especially with children, exuberant, active, fun, lively and spirited. The character of a good example must never be shy nor aggressive. Generally speaking, the Springer Spaniel is not a guard dog. Nevertheless, it becomes very fond of the members of the family and tends to protect them and the home. It will bark loudly like a good watchdog, but is friendly with strangers. Altogether, its character is less problematic than the Cocker Spaniel, and it does not show the same unrestrained behaviour. The extraordinarily handsome coat of the Springer Spaniel makes it a spectacular pet, which will be admired wherever it goes. Strong, robust and resistant to the weather, it rarely has particular health problems. The Springer Spaniel is certainly a dog that deserves the success it has attained in recent years with hunters and as a family pet. Physical characteristics. This is a medium-sized dog, about 51 centimeters at the withers, with a compact body, well-proportioned and strong. The skull is of medium length, rather large and slightly rounded, with a slightly marked stop. The muzzle is proportional to the skull, high, well-defined below the eyes. The eyes are medium size, almond-shaped, dark nut brown in colour, with a gentle but alert expression. The nose must be well developed, the chops squarish and slightly pendulous. The ears are set close to the head, fairly long and fringed. The jaws are strong, with a complete set of strong regular teeth and a scissor bite. The forelegs are straight and well boned. The hind legs have large, muscular, well developed thighs and moderate angulation. The chest has well rounded ribs and the brisket is well let down. The back must be strong and straight, muscular loins, slightly arched so that the tail is set low and well fringed. The gait is characteristic, with front legs that move directly from the shoulder, throwing the feet forwards. The hindquarters sit well under the body and are in line with the forelegs. The movement is free and confident. The amble is the characteristic gait. Feet compact, tight and well-rounded with strong full pads. The coat is handsome with dense, straight, weatherproof hair, moderate feathering on the ears, the chest and the rear of the legs. Colours admitted are liver and white, black and white or one of the two colours with tan markings.
A proper diet is essential to your dog's correct and full development so as to be able to keep it in perfect shape and health. Some people believe that dogs can eat virtually anything and therefore give their dogs all kinds of food, often recycling the leftovers from their own meals. This is a serious mistake, since what may be digestible to us and a source of nourishing substances often cannot be digested by dogs or is unable to be metabolized. A final piece of advice. It sometimes happens that a dog loses its appetite and refuses food for 1 or even 2 days. This is a normal occurrence, and in these cases it is a good rule not to always leave a full bowl of food down for the dogs. Instead, the food should be removed after a short time. Present the bowl of food again at the following mealtime after having changed its contents. In the event of loss of appetite lasting for more than 2 days without the presence of side symptoms, or if it is accompanied from the outset by symptoms of general suffering or exhaustion, consult your vet immediately. It is very likely to be an ordinary ailment, but in this case it is not worth taking a risk, and it is better to seek reassurance from an expert. We will now begin with a brief description of a dog's digestive apparatus. As in all carnivores, the stomach is of large dimensions, whereas the intestine is relatively short. Initial digestion in the stomach takes from 3 to 8 hours. Then the food passes into the intestine, where the nourishing substances are assimilated, which are then transmitted to all the organs through the blood. The stomach's large capacity and the slow digestion process allow abundant meals to be eaten at fairly spaced out intervals. Naturally, to keep dogs in excellent health, it is necessary to provide them with all the elements that they require, that is, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins and minerals. When dogs were carnivorous predators, these elements were assimilated by dogs through the animals that they hunted and which were generally herbivores. Afterwards, civilization has led it to feed differently, but it will always be necessary to provide dogs with the appropriate substances. Dogs produce energy from their diet, which is then used for the maintenance of vital functions and movement. The more active a dog is, the greater the energy intake it will require. Without going into detailed food studies that would require a specific treatise, we can simply say that dogs particularly require fats or lipids, both of animal and vegetable origin, and it is these which provide the necessary energy and which accumulate in the organism to provide possible energy reserves. The proteins that make up the large part of the animal's body are also essential. These are indispensable to the formation of all the tissues, especially muscles, and also constitute the basis of hormones and the blood. They therefore represent an irreplaceable element in a proper diet, even more so in puppies, which must build their bodies. Sources of protein are meat, cheese, eggs and fish, which are well digested by dogs, and also soybean flour, peanuts, legumes, which are however digested with more difficulty. An excess of proteins is harmful and can lead to various kinds of disorders, depending on the conditions. Carbohydrates are not essential to a dog's diet. They are, however, very useful at the end of pregnancy. Starch, which is the most important carbohydrate present in the diet, is poorly digested by dogs and needs to undergo preliminary treatment such as cooking, flaking, etc. This is why if you use pasta or rice as a food for your canine friend, it needs to be boiled for a long time to eliminate a large part of the starch present. Fiber, which often accompanies carbohydrates, is especially useful in the diet of sedentary dogs, since it helps to prevent constipation, given the speed with which it passes through the alimentary tract. Vitamins are also necessary, even if in infinitesimal amounts. They are found in many vegetables and are synthesized by herbivorous animals. This is the reason why when a carnivore kills its prey, generally herbivorous, it immediately feeds on the intestines, where there are residues of partially digested vegetable matter. This also explains why, to your considerable annoyance, your dog often eats the excrement of herbivorous animals as soon as it gets the chance. A build-up of vitamins can be harmful, and therefore, if you use pre-prepared feed, you should carefully check the substances contained in the feed before adding supplements, and if in doubt, consult your vet. Minerals are essential to the diet and are supplied by foods. Deficiency in certain minerals such as calcium, iron, potassium, sodium, copper and others can cause abnormal growth in puppies, also with serious consequences and general debility in adult dogs, or the onset of problems of varying degrees. There is excellent pre-packed feed on the market, both moist and dry types, that provide all the necessary elements for initial growth, and to then keep your dog in top shape. Even if you use pre-packed feed, you will, however, be able to give some fruit or other food which your dog will find tasty, taking care not to exaggerate and not to give harmful substances such as sweets, fried foods, rice dishes, fresh or soft doughy bread that are extremely harmful and which can also have very serious long-term consequences. Instead, if you want to prepare the food yourself, then follow the advice of the breeder who sold you the dog, or your vet's advice. As a general rule, it is worth knowing that meat, ideally beef, is essential. If pork meat is given, it must be well cooked in order to avoid infections. Poultry, meat and rabbit are also fine, provided that they are completely boneless. Giblets, although less rich in nourishing substances, are well liked. Fish is an excellent food and is best given cooked. It is particularly advisable for low-fat diets for dogs with digestive or skin problems. It is also an excellent means with which to make the diet less monotonous. Eggs are appetizing and supply many nourishing substances. They are particularly advisable for puppies and suckling females. Yolks can be consumed raw, whereas the albumin should always be cooked. Fats, such as lard and oil, are always readily accepted by dogs and are particularly useful during moments of work or physical effort. 1 or 2 teaspoonfuls of oil added to food are always beneficial. Dry bread is a good energy source, but it must be well dried. It is also useful for cleaning your dog's teeth and for keeping them in good condition. Pasta and rice are very useful, but as we have already said, they should be cooked very well to eliminate starch, which is not easily digested. Fruit and vegetables, even if not essential, can be given to dogs that appreciate them. However, the nutritional intake is very slight and is only worthy of note for the intake of roughage. Needless to say, the final element which is essential to nutrition is water. Fresh and plentiful, that must be available at all times. If in a bowl, it should be changed as often as possible, especially during hot spells. It is absolutely indispensable to dogs that eat dry and not moistened feed. The final aspect of the diet to take into consideration is the frequency of meals. From birth, puppies have their meals by following times that are spaced out by the instinct of the mother and the other siblings in the litter. The feeds are gradually reduced during weaning and are integrated with suitable foods that should be recommended by an experienced breeder or a vet. Between 1 and 3 months of age, weaned puppies should have 4 meals at regular intervals. From 4 to 7 or 8 months, the number of meals can be reduced to 3, further reduced to 2 meals at 8 to 18 months, and afterwards, if desired, down to just 1 meal a day, even if it is not harmful to continue with 2. On the contrary, this is recommended by certain individuals. The decision to have a dog is an important one to make, which must be thought over carefully without ignoring some useful basic information. The vaccination prophylaxis must always be carried out with utmost care to try and protect not only the puppies but also adult dogs from the most common illnesses. Generally speaking, a puppy leaves the breeder after having been vaccinated at around 40 to 45 days with a triad vaccine against canine distemper, infectious hepatitis and parvovirus. A second quadrivalent vaccination, also including leptospirosis as well as the 3 ailments already mentioned, is generally carried out after 3 weeks. An additional vaccination can be carried out after a month, again quadrivalent, to be then replaced annually throughout the dog's lifespan. A dog can be vaccinated only if it is in perfect health and thus also free from endoparasites. Appropriate antihelminthic treatment must be carried out normally twice a year. Different types of ascarids exist, each of which specifically infests an animal species, man included, and there is practically no risk of zoonosis, that is, transmission of the infestation from dog to man. It is important that dogs are also kept free from ectoparasites, that is, those that live on dogs such as fleas and mites, both of which are hematophages. Moreover, fleas act as an intermediate host for a type of taenia. Numerous specific products exist to free dogs from these annoying parasites, but one must not forget to also carry out appropriate disinfesting operations in the areas where dogs live. The arrival of spring exacerbates the problems caused by undesired guests, the mites that arrive along with the initial spring warmth. A run in the meadows through woods, perhaps near groups of farmhouses and farms where there is livestock, can result in our canine friend returning home with mites. Not necessarily, since some factors may exist which make a dog more or less susceptible, also depending on its general state of health, that can influence whether or not a dog will pick up these acari. They represent a grave danger to dogs because they transmit pyroplasmosis, a serious infection carried by protozoa of the Pyroplasma species that affects pets and also causes death if not discovered and treated in time. The symptoms in its acute form are represented by fever, also sthenic, asthenia, pallor of the apparent mucous membranes, and hyperchromia of the urine that can also become brown-black in colour. In advanced cases, jaundice and a comatose state which could possibly result in death. The mites suck blood for 2 or 3 weeks, and once having mated, the female then detaches itself from the animal and deposits the eggs a week later. The deposited larvae, recognizable by their reddish colour, are minute, like tiny beads. They also look for a host on which to climb, sucking blood for several days. They then detach themselves and after a few days change into octopede nymphs of bluish colour. They become adults towards August or September. With the arrival of autumn, the adults immediately upon hatching then lay dormant in cracks in the ground until the next spring. In general, the mites attach themselves to less thick skin such as ears, armpits, groin, between the digits of the paws. Therefore, as a precautionary measure, we should always examine our canine friends for signs of any undesired guests after a walk in the open. Correct dog hygiene starts with coat care. For most breeds, but not all, it is advisable to brush the coat almost daily in order to remove the hairs that have reached the end of their life cycle. The coat of many breeds requires specialized grooming, which is to be carried out several times a year. One must not generalize about the fact that a shiny coat is a sign of good health, since in some breeds it should have a tendency to be dull. Dogs must not be washed too often so as not to damage the protective function of the sebaceous glands. The skin in normal conditions should always look clean without dandruff deposits or desquamations of any kind. Should cutaneous alterations appear such as eczema, alopecia areas, i.e. hair loss and failure of hair regrowth, thickening or the appearance of abnormal pigmentation, consult your vet without delay. Cutaneous alterations due to mycosis or mange are spread by contagion, but only in the case of particularly debilitated animals and when one fails to observe the most basic hygienic rules. Claws must also be checked periodically. These are normally worn down in dogs that undergo normal physical activities, but it may be necessary to shorten them with the aid of a special tool. Oral hygiene should never be overlooked, and especially in miniature breeds, tartar removal is necessary from time to time because it can cause pyorrhea and bad breath. Certain bones are available on the market that, besides constituting a treat for our four-legged friend, act as a natural toothbrush. In puppies aged between 4 and 6 months, the deciduous dentition is gradually replaced by the permanent one. Regular inspections of the mouth are advisable during this period to check that everything is okay. The existence of cardiopulmonary filariasis, a serious disease caused by a nematode parasite, Dirofilaria immitis, or the blood and heart, has been known for several centuries, as has been known the important transmission mechanism of the disease by the mosquito for about a century. However, it is only in the last 20 years, due to the rapid diffusion of filariasis in dogs kept for company and work dogs, that research institutes, pharmaceutical companies and vets have paid increasing attention to the problem. It is therefore important that dog owners are also aware, even if in general terms, of the existence and phenomena of the parasitosis. The transmission of the disease occurs through the mosquito's sting, which takes up the filaria larvae by sucking blood from an infected subject to then inoculate them into another healthy dog. The high contagiousness of the parasitosis is therefore easily understandable, in addition to its seasonality, spring-summer. During a period of around 6 months, the larvae in the dog's blood grow into adult worms that are situated in the heart and pulmonary arteries. In turn, the adult filariae produce small larvae called microfilariae, which will live in the blood. The dogs most affected are obviously those that spend more or less long periods outside, hence gun dogs, work dogs, and those that sleep in the open. The damage induced by the presence of the filariae is of considerable seriousness for that which concerns the cardiocirculatory function, and initially shown as a tendency for dogs to tire easily and the presence of a cough or respiratory dysfunction. The vet giving treatment at this stage will perform different clinical and laboratory tests that will confirm the presence of the parasites. On the contrary, the damage caused by chronic cardiopulmonary filariasis is extremely serious. The alteration of the cardiocirculatory function is often accompanied by liver and kidney lesions and a state of generalized hypersensitivity in the whole organism. The prevention programs that have only been practicable for a few years thanks to the use of specific new drugs are simple to carry out and do not involve toxicity risks for dogs. After having carried out a test to ensure the absence of a previous infestation, the oral administration of a medicine once a month for the duration of the entire hot season will give dogs effective protection, also if they are stung by an infected mosquito.
Cocker Spaniel was bred in England for a specific purpose in hunting, the retrieval of downed game. But the great success of this breed, which is known everywhere, is due to its particularly sensitive and stable character, its gentle and appealing expression. The long dangling ears, but above all the large languid eyes, inspire affection and make it much admired. The dog's name derives from its hunting specialization, woodcock, and was chosen in 1893 to differentiate this dog from other spaniels. The cocker is unmatched in flushing woodcock from thorny bushes and undergrowth. It will flush the birds and retrieve them when downed, bringing them gently and obediently to the hunter. The branch of spaniels, of which the cocker is the best known example, has ancient origins, and a decree is documented in 948 that established a large fine for anyone who killed one of these dogs. Etymologically, the name could derive from the Celtic word span, rabbit. According to some experts, the spaniels descend from ancient brachoid dogs of Spanish origin used for hunting quail. In Central Europe, American Cocker Spaniel has a robust and compact body with a finely sculpted head. The head is well developed and rounded, without any tendency to flattening. The superciliary arch must be clearly marked and the stop well pronounced. The muzzle is wide and deep, with square jaws. The upper lip must cover the lower jaw. The coat is silky, flat or slightly wavy, shorter and finer on the head. The ears, the chest, the belly and the legs are well fringed. The colours admitted are jet black and other solid colours, black and tan, roan and multicoloured. Lighter markings are acceptable on the head. For the multicoloured, it is essential for there to be 2 or more colours in the coat, with well-defined and distributed marks all over the body. The character. The Cocker Spaniel is a lively dog, robust and calm. As a retriever, it is much appreciated for its soft mouth and its obedience. These breed characteristics make it responsive and easy to train, and can be developed in many areas of hunting. The Cocker Spaniel is not the only hunting dog that is chosen as a pet. These quail dogs were numerous and widespread. As the cynologist Tschudi confirms, the German laws of the year 700 mention a Canis acceptorius, used for hunting with falcons, also known as happy Huhund. Various paintings and some documents from this period show that the quail dog was also known as Wachtelhund, but in some areas it was more commonly known as a spaniel. The centre of the development of the breed could therefore be located in the Mediterranean basin, the successive diffusion being due to the migration of various populations. Around 1300, the spaniel was popular in France, a country with ancient hunting traditions, and Gaston Phoebus was one of its greatest admirers. But the true home of the Cocker Spaniel must be considered England, where the work of selecting is widely documented from the year 1400 onwards. In 1570, John Keyes, court physician, better known by the pseudonym Dr. Caius, wrote a book about British dogs of English dogs, in which he gave a precise classification of all the breeds raised in Great Britain. There is a detailed description of the spaniels, which are divided into land spaniels and water spaniels. It is incredible that the absurd idea that worms could breed in the dog's tail, perhaps justifiable in the cultural context of a couple of centuries past, persisted until about 30 years ago. We will close this historical chapter by saying that in 1870 the spaniels were known as field spaniels, that is, land spaniels, and were divided into 2 varieties, even when they came from the same litter, according to whether they weighed more or less than 12 kilos. The definitive name of Cocker Spaniel was adopted in 1893, but in 1901 the distinction based on the weight of the dog was abolished because it had become anachronistic. The selection carried out has emphasized the aesthetic aspect, which has undoubtedly encouraged the diffusion of the breed worldwide. In 1880, the first examples arrived from America, where the selection was based on aesthetic canons that emphasized the dramatic aspects of the breed. The result was a new breed, the American Cocker Spaniel, which met with public favor throughout the world. This cocker is the smallest of the spaniels. The height for dogs must be 38 centimetres, while for bitches it is 35.5 centimetres. A black spaniel could have been one of the ancestors of the modern cocker. It must be remembered that in past centuries, dog shows, in the sense of opportunities for technical comparison between the dogs bred in various kennels, were not as common as they are today. Therefore, the breeders of the past, almost all aristocrats or peers of the realm, concentrated the selection on the hunting capacity of the dogs and considered aesthetics of marginal importance. This situation contributed to creating the basis for the diversification of the spaniel breeds as we know them today: the Clumber Spaniel, the Sussex Spaniel, the Springer Spaniel and the King Charles Spaniel. In 1677, Nicholas Cox described a land spaniel that is not dissimilar to the modern cocker. He says it is of a good size and agile, small rather than large, lively and courageous. The puppy must be strong, robust, with agile conformation, fast gait, the tail in continuous movement, the nostrils quivering, with an innate instinct for the search, though never getting carried away and becoming disobedient. Apart from this description, Cox explains why it is necessary to dock the tail. In the first place, it prevents worms from breeding there. Secondly, if the tail is not docked, the dog will be less ready to dive into thick undergrowth in search of the game. Finally, the dog looks better.